In this video, we're going to take a look at my top 7 things to avoid in Microsoft 365 as an administrator, and I guarantee you're going to learn something here. Greetings everyone, welcome back to my channel. Andy here, Microsoft MVP as well as a Microsoft certified trainer. So nice to see you, and I really do appreciate you dropping by, especially if this is your first visit. You know, often we make mistakes as administrators. There's things that we click on, or in fact there are things that often come as a default setting that we don't know that we should change. And this is really what I'm going to focus on in this week's episode. So I've got my top 7 things here that you simply need to check that are not on by default or that you've maybe changed, because they can potentially cause not just security nightmares, but also potentially admin nightmares as well. Now, if you've not subscribed to the channel, we love subscribers, so go ahead, bump that subscribe button, ring the bell, and you won't miss out on the good stuff in the future. And of course, if you enjoy the session, I would really appreciate it if you bump the like button. It really does make a difference. Okay, now if you've got questions, comments about this or any of my other sessions, get them down below, because I love your questions. All right, so I think without any further ado, I think it's about time we jump into some demos. Let's take a look. One of the huge mistakes that administrators often do is granting a user global admin privileges. This is a definite no-no and something that can easily be remedied in Azure Active Directory. So rather than assigning a user global admin privileges, what you want to do is go into roles and administrators, and in here we have hundreds, well, not hundreds, but many different roles. And as you can see, these roles are associated against job function. So for example, if you want a user to, for example, manage users, then consider, rather than using global admin privileges, why not consider something like a user admin? So a user admin privilege is the second most powerful role in Microsoft Azure. So I can come in here and I can easily assign this role to, for example, in this case, Adele. And more than that, you can extend this capability by saying, okay, providing what we call just-in-time administration by the use of something called PIM. And PIM means I can go in and I can add in another user. So if I select another user here called, for example, Alex, and I'll click on Alex's account, and if I click next, I can now assign a temporary assignment, and essentially he's eligible to use the role. Now, although he may not need access to the role, he's eligible to use it. So it's a bit like, you know, you lend your car keys to your neighbor and he's eligible to drive your car, but he doesn't decide, you know, for one reason or another, he doesn't decide to actually do it, but he still has the keys. So he still has the capability. So the assigning a temporary access for a particular role here is really useful. So we call this eligible assignments, and this comes part of privileged identity management in Azure Active Directory. So rather than, you know, going crazy and assigning global admin privileges, you may want to consider role-based admin privileges. You can also do this in Microsoft 365 by going into roles in here, and if you look at the various roles, they're kind of job-based. So for example, is the user responsible for billing purposes? Is the user an Exchange admin, a SharePoint admin, a Teams admin? I'm sure you get the idea. Really powerful feature. Now, one final thing, if you do really need to have global admin privileges, there is one other really useful tool that you can use, and this is the global reader role. The global reader role has full access, but can only read content. So consider not just in time access, but definitely just enough administration to carry out their job. Now, this next one is a little bit crazy, I know, but Microsoft suggests that you should create yourself a break glass account. And for the love of God, don't call it administrator or something stupid like that. So, for example, here I've got a user called John Snow, and I recommend that you create an extremely complex password on this. And the main reason is because you're not going to use multi-factor authentication on this account. Yes, I know, it's beyond crazy, I know. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to grant John Snow, I'm going to give him admin access, but I'm going to make him a global admin. And one of the reasons why we don't use MFA is because if it goes horribly wrong, something happens, and this is your only global admin account, then you literally will not be able to get back into Microsoft 365, and Microsoft support will have a heck of a job restoring you. So it's a good idea just to have this, what we call a backup account or a break glass account. So make sure that you're not using multi-factor authentication. Assign a really long password for it. Store the details of the user account in your safe somewhere very, very careful, and obviously just be very careful with this particular account. All right, so that's what we call a break glass account in Microsoft 365. Now, I'm sure you're all aware that you can add a custom domain in here, and I just want to mention one definite no-no. So my custom domain, I'll just create this domain here. I'll call it, let's say, bobsboats.com. All right. So if you're adding in your own custom domain, I can go ahead and say, yep, I want to use this domain. And before you can use it, what you'll need to do is verify that you own the domain. And you verify it in a number of ways. You can add a TXT record, and that TXT record will look something like this. It will be ms equals ms and then a random number at the end of it. Now, once you've done that and your domain has been verified, that's it. So you're then into Microsoft 365, you're then using that DNS domain name. Now, once you've created your domain name, there are two schools of thoughts. One school of thought suggests that you can go in and you can simply delete your DNS record now. And to be fair, that's absolutely true, you can. However, there is a serious security problem here if you do. You're leaving yourself wide open to potential domain hijacking. And the fact is that you're leaving your Microsoft 365 domain essentially dangling in midair. So Microsoft and myself strongly recommend that you don't delete your DNS record. So as you know, I recently recorded a video on shared mailboxes, and I mentioned the fact that you could go into Teams and Groups here in Microsoft 365. I could go into shared mailboxes and I could create a shared mailbox. So for example, I'm in Oslo this week. I could call this my Oslo production. And in here, I'm going to create this shared mailbox, Oslo production, and I'm just going to click on Save Changes. Now, because I've gone ahead and created this mailbox, at the moment it's not associated with any potential users. So one of the things you're going to want to do is you're going to want to add some members to your mailbox. So I'm going to click on members here, and I'm going to click on, and I'm going to add in a few members to my mailbox. So these are, let's say, salespeople in my sales team. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go and add them in. Now, when you add them in, you can see that one of the benefits of a shared mailbox, of course, as I said in a recent video, was the fact that they can collaborate, they can work together, and that mailbox will essentially appear in their Outlook. So that's a pretty nice feature. However, I did discover an interesting potential issue with this. So if I go into users and come into active users, I mentioned last time that one of the cool things is if a user leaves the company, you can convert a mailbox. So for example, here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and I've got a user called Lee. And here in Lee's user account in Microsoft 365, I'm going to click on the Mail tab here. And one of the options is to convert Lee's mailbox. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to convert that. So what this now does is it converts Lee's mailbox to become a shared mailbox. Okay, so you can now see that the mailbox has come through. And this is now indeed a shared mailbox. So what I can now do is I can come in here, and one of the things you might want to do is you might want to go into the mailbox and you might want to add some members in here. So again, I can scroll down here, I can click on edit to add some members, and I can bring some members in. So in this case, I'm just going to bring in a few members. I'm going to bring in Christy, I'm going to bring in Deborah and Diego, and these guys, of course, will now have access to Lee's mailbox, which sounds really good and very, very similar to the Oslo production mailbox that I just created. So what I want to do now is I want to, obviously, you might say, well, I don't need Lee's account anymore. Okay, so Lee's decided he's going to leave the company, and you still want your users to have access to that mailbox. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to locate Lee's account. I'm going to select Lee's account and I'm going to delete it. Okay, so I'm going to delete Lee's account, and you can see mailbox delegate permissions will be removed. Okay, so that's interesting. So what you can do, however, is you can give the user access to Lee's email for 30 days. So one of the problem with shared mailboxes is if you create a shared mailbox or convert a shared mailbox from a user account, the user account must still exist. So and the shared mailbox will only exist as long as the user account does, even in the recycle bin. So rather than deleting the user account, what I strongly suggest is that you go into Lee's account, and in here you can actually block his sign-in. All right, so you can block the sign-in for that user, but that shared mailbox still remains. All right, and then it continues to be tethered to the user account. Now, the problem is if you delete the user account, it will potentially delete the mailbox. Please note that you don't have this problem with standard shared mailboxes, only where it's associated with a particular user. Now, the one thing that you can do is you might say, well, okay, I'd like to convert this back to a regular mailbox. Can I do that? So in Exchange Online, again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find Lee's account. And now you can see up here, not only this is where you can change the delegation settings, but this is where I can also convert it back to be a regular mailbox, from a shared mailbox back to a regular mailbox. And again, you could detach it and then reassign different users' permissions. Now, please note that if you placed the user account on legal hold or litigation hold, you could then detach the mailbox from the user account and then reattach another user, assign the full license to the user, and then take the mailbox off legal hold. That's one way that you could potentially move mailboxes. But that's a big gotcha, so watch out for that one. Up next, we're in Microsoft Teams, and I'm going to come into Enhanced Encryption Policies. And the crazy thing about this is it's actually off by default. So if you're concerned about privacy, potentially snoopers could listen in on your important calls. So for the love of God, one of the things you're going to want to switch on is you're going to want to switch on this, all right? Now, you can see you've got a couple of options, whether it's off completely as a service, but it's off, but users can switch it on. So, for example, if management want to make a call and they want to switch on enhanced encryption, then this will essentially secure the end-to-end service. Otherwise, it's potential that Microsoft could, or a vendor or somebody could listen in on calls. Now, I just want to mention a quick gotcha here. If you want to use the call recording service, that would not be able, you would not be able to use that here because the call is encrypted. So that's just a little gotcha, but again, a really super important piece of technology. Now we're almost there, but this is just one that you could easily miss. So I'm here in Azure Active Directory and I've come into external collaboration settings. Now in the past I've covered many of these different settings in a number of my videos on this very channel. But there's a couple of things that you definitely want to watch out for here. And for this is essentially guest user access. So the level of access that you want to be the default setting, as well as the default guest invite settings. And you can see here, there are three options for your guest user access. So guest users will have the same access as members. Now, if you're talking about Microsoft Teams, of course, then we're talking about members within your company. So guests would have the same access. However, if you want to restrict it a little bit, then you can have limited access to properties and memberships of certain directory objects. Or guest user access is restricted to properties and memberships of their own directory. And this, my friends, is the most restrictive. All right. So again, this is the default. So be very careful when you're assigning guest user access. And again, this is one guest invite settings that again could cause potential real headaches. So check it out. This is actually the default. Anyone in the organization can invite guest users, including guests and non-admins. For the love of God, you really don't want to do that, okay? Member users and users assigned to specific admin roles can invite guests. So for example, obviously global admins, user admins, but we also have a special admin role in Azure called the guest inviter role. And again, that's a pretty good option here, but you know, it gets rid of the anonymous problem above. You've also got only users assigned to specific admin roles can invite guests. Again, depending on the security requirements of your company, this is also one that you might choose. The final option here is no one in the organization can invite guests, and this includes admins, except the global admin, of course. So again, that is extremely restrictive. So again, if you're, very, very kindly tightly knit and you don't want any external collaboration, any guests, that is one potential solution for you. So I think that is probably a good option, but definitely a couple of things to watch out for there. So this is one mistake that so many admins make. And you can see here, other organizations that collaborate with me. This is my account here. And you can see that at the moment, I've got a number of options here. And I have an organization called Adatum and Contoso. And the problem is, often you might want to leave. And to be quite frank, it's a little bit harder than you might think trying to leave an organization. And it says here, yes, I want to leave Contoso because the admin here is allowing me to do so. So I'm going to say, yes, I don't want to be with Contoso anymore, and I'm all done. And that's really nice. However, if I go back into my external admin collaboration settings and just scroll down here, you can see that you've got the external user leave settings, and so many companies have it on no. So a big warning for this here is be really careful with that, because if that's set to no, when I click on leave, I'm going to be very, very frustrated. So watch out for that one. So there you have it, my top 7 things to avoid doing in Microsoft 365, because they could cause you potential nightmares, and you really do want to avoid that. Hey, listen, if you enjoyed the session, bump the like button. It really does make a difference to my channel. And if you've not subscribed, we love to have you on board. So go ahead, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, and you won't miss out on the good stuff in the future. And if you've got questions, comments about this, and any of my other sessions actually, then just get them down below and I'll do my very best as usual to answer them for you. All right, that's it for this week. Thank you so much for joining me. I really do appreciate it, and I'll see you next time around. You stay safe. See you soon. Hey, thanks so much for dropping by today. Here's a couple of videos that you may enjoy, and while you're here, go ahead, click on the subscribe button and you won't miss out.